I'd like to set out to show you how solving problems in mathematics is closely related to how we solve worldview problems. What are the sorts of problems that come up in worldview analysis? Well, your worldview is really your map of reality. Most of you, all of you, have a map of some aspect of reality. I mean, reality is a difficult thing for most people to wrap their minds around. There's the seen realm and the unseen realm. And as you grow up, you get a map of that which is seen, but then you're also developing a map of that which is unseen. Now, the things that are unseen involve basically what it is you're going to worship. Some people worship God, and so it's like God is unseen to us. We can see his work, but so God is on our worldview map, and then you got to have some explanation for what we do see. Has this always been here? Did it come in the Big Bang? Was it just created by God 6,000 years ago? So you've got to have some map of how to handle what is seen. You've got to have a map of how to handle what is unseen, things like truth, justice. Justice is real, but it's unseen. Evil, I would argue, is real. Not everyone thinks evil is a thing. Some people think evil is just a social construct. And then you've got what's inside human beings themselves. What is going on with human? What's your map of human beings? Some people view humans as merely animals. Others view them as made in the image of God. So your map of reality guides you to understanding. Have we talked this year about maybe when situations where you're in a burning building and and the power goes out, or maybe have we talked about this idea of getting to a place of safety? Just to help you understand how a map of reality is so important. Just imagine for a moment that you're in your second floor bedroom, or maybe you're in a house that has a second floor bedroom, and suppose you've lived there for 10 years, you know this house inside out. And then you hear it's 3 o'clock in the morning, the tornado siren goes off, and the power goes off in your house. It is pitch dark, and you hear the tornado coming, and you know you have to get to your basement in the dark. Do you have a map in your mind? Maybe you can imagine, I don't know if the house you live in has a second floor, but can you imagine, those of you who ever have lived in a second floor bedroom, do you think you could use a mental map of reality to get from your bedroom down to the basement in pitch darkness? That's an example of a map of the seen realm, a mental map. Your worldview is a map of reality that allows you to navigate through darkness. And for most of us, the darkness is the future. We don't really know what our future holds. It's invisible to us. But we have a mental map that guides us through decision making and navigating the unseen future. Am I going to grow up? Am I going to get married? Am I ever going to graduate from college? Am I going to have kids? When I die, am I going to go to heaven, or is that just the end of my existence? We have this map of the future that really guides us through. So a worldview is essentially a map of reality, both the seen and the unseen realm. And so I would argue that the way that we solve problems in the mathematical realm is very similar to the way that we solve problems in worldview work, which is trying to form an accurate map of reality. Because if nothing else happens here at Wheaton Academy and in college, wherever you go to college, hopefully, if nothing else, hopefully you get an accurate map of reality, an accurate mental map of reality. Because if your map of reality, just imagine, you're on the second floor, you're in a second floor bedroom. If your map of reality is not correct, you might end up walking off of a third floor balcony. Or falling down the steps. You need to have an accurate map of reality, otherwise your future is imperiled. So one of the things that you have to do when you're forming a map of reality is you have to try to make sense of human suffering. What causes human suffering? That's a worldview problem that people have to solve, that you have to solve. And what is the solution to human suffering? The way that mathematicians solve math problems is actually shockingly similar to the way that you as an educated person are going to solve problems in forming an accurate map of reality. So I'd like to show you how similar they are. And in the process, we'll see a clip from the movie Shrek. Okay? Are you ready for this? All right. Now, last Friday, I had surgery. My appendix was taken out. The night before that, my wife came to me with a math question. We've been married 31 years. I can count on one hand the number of times. No, actually, it's been probably more than 10 times that she's asked me for a math input. Part of this is her handwriting. Here's the math problem that she came to ask me about. The weird thing is that it's the same thing that I'm teaching in Algebra 2, which is solving systems of 2 equations and 2 unknowns. Okay. This is the first time my wife's ever come to me with a question that basically I had to come up with a system of 2 equations and 2 unknowns. She just published a book, it came out September 12th, and she's trying to figure out how many books does she have to sell in order to equal her advance. They give her like a certain number of $1,000 in advance just to write the book. And then once that advance is paid for by book sales, then she can actually start getting paid beyond that. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I know the name of the book?
Yeah, the book is entitled Redeeming the Feminine Soul. God's Surprising, here, let's look it up at Amazon, see how it's doing. But yeah, if you were, I'm not here selling books, but since you asked, her name is Julie Roy. Julie Roy's Amazon Soul. I'll probably bring it up. Redeeming the Feminine Soul, God's Surprising Vision. So, like, this book is in paperback form, but you can also get the e-book, the Kindle version. It's got 15 customer reviews right now. Kay Arthur wrote the forward. Let's look at the cover. So the cover
is that your wife?
That's not my wife, but that's the woman on the cover of the book that my wife wrote. So for Rebecca, God's Surprising Vision for Womanhood. So it's actually worldviews. People, based on their worldview, their map of reality. Some people, womanhood is a lot different than it is for other people. But anyway, so that book came out September 12th. And so it's really up to her to sell the book. And so she told me that the author of the book gets $2.5 for every ebook that is sold, and $1.4 for every paperback. That's what goes to the author. I mean, Amazon, the book is selling for, what is it? How much do they charge for this thing? Looks like at Amazon you can get paperback for $11.69 if you have a Prime membership. The Kindle book is $9.99. And anyway, and she also learned from her publisher that about 28% of book sales are ebooks, the Kindle version, and about 72% of book sales are paperbacks. And so I realized that I had to, in the spirit of the spherical chicken, I had to attach meaning to a symbol with words. I said, well, she's asking me how many ebooks, or how many paperbacks do I have to sell? How many ebooks? Until I get my advance back. And so I immediately sense it's going to be a system of 2 equations, 2 unknowns. I used my uniquely human ability to attach meaning to a symbol using words. I said, let X represent the number of ebooks, and let Y represent the number of paperbacks sold. And then I came up with a verbal model for this. And my basic idea was that the income from the ebooks plus the income from the paperbacks would be the total income. Some of this I have to click through kind of fast, so I'm going to get my clicker out, clicker installed and turned on. But anyway, and then basically to find income, it's like slope is output changeover. It's like the slope. And that's all stuff that, as a calculus student, this is no mystery to you. So one equation I came up with was, okay, what was it, income per ebook? What was it, $2.5 per ebook? Is that what it said? And $1.4. Now, I told my wife I was going to use this example. We decided, as a family, as a husband and wife, we decided we're not going to tell you what her advance was from Thomas Nelson, her publisher. So we decided to just use kind of a randomly selected number, $40,000. It wasn't $40,000. The truth is, it's either more or less than that, but we'll just use $40,000 as a working example. Now, so then it's like, oh no, what's the second equation? I know 28% of the books sold are ebooks. So at this point, there was some discussion and I made a mistake. I wrote down an equation that I thought was true, but was not true. The equation I thought was true was that 2.5x is going to be 28% of 40,000. And then solve this system. It's not a true equation. the idea that's based on is not real. But I thought it was true. Just as I was trying to impress my wife with my mathematical skills, and so I wasn't being like super careful. And but I did go to the calculator. I said, look, I can use reduced row echelon form. We can, Julie, you have to sell 20,571 paperback books before you can expect to start getting paid from your publisher, before you can get royalties. And then I went to bed. It was late at night. I had to wake up at 4:15 to get to the hospital. Now I'm at the hospital. And I realized after they prepared me for surgery, a 7 a.m. surgery, I realized, oh no, I don't have my calculator with me. And I just made a mistake. It's not 28% of the income is from ebooks. 28% of the books sold are ebooks. So it's 6 a.m. Surgery starts at 7. And I realized this is the system, not that. I should have said that, number of ebooks over the total number of books is point. That's what I should have done. And so, I didn't have a graphing calculator with me, and they told me that I wouldn't remember things during surgery, so I'm getting nervous. It's like, are the drugs that they give me during surgery, are they gonna wipe out my memory? Am I gonna remember this? They didn't even let me wear my wedding ring to the hospital. You can't have your wedding ring on during surgery, much less, I'm asking the nurses do you have a TI-84? I really need to solve this system.
Wait, you asked that?
Okay. All right, so you called me out. I felt like asking that. I knew they didn't have one, but the story's funnier when I say that I asked the nurse. I did in my mind, without the TI-84, I was able to multiply both sides by x plus y, subtract 0.20. So this far I was able to get in my head, but I didn't want to try to solve that system in my head. No paper, no pencil. So fortunately, after surgery was at 7. I woke up at like 10, and I was home by 11:30 a.m. And as soon as I got home, I took out the graphing calculator, typed this in, and found out it's not 20,000 books, it's only 16.8 thousand books they have to sell. I solved this problem mathematically, which seemed overwhelming to my imagination. It's like this reality of book selling. I couldn't wrap my mind around it unless I came up with some symbols that were clearly defined that represented reality. Now, so we're gonna find out that there are screenwriters who try to solve the problem of human suffering in a very similar way. They use symbols, systems of symbols. Just like this is a system of equations, it's a system of equations that are made up of symbols. Books and movies are systems of symbols that make sense of reality. Now, I submit this for your input. You might not agree with this statement, but one thing that I've noticed, this is a conclusion I've come to, and I'm going to try to support it during this presentation. But what I'm going to try to argue for is that there's a lot of leaders in the cultural arena who believe that the cause of human suffering is Christianity. That Christians coming out and saying, God said that these things are evil and these things are good. If you've done any of these evil things, then you deserve to go to hell, and you need Jesus Christ to save you from your sin. That's what's wrong with the world, because there's people who, the Bible says that a man is supposed to get married to a woman. And there's people who are born into a male body, and they say, but I'm really a woman. And they want to set up their marriage differently according to their own plan in their own heart. And the fact that they're made to feel guilty for doing that, it just ruins people's lives. And not to mention the fact that religion causes wars left and right. There are people out there, I'm convinced, that really believe that Christianity is the cause of human suffering. And if we could just erase from people's consciousness, from people's imaginations, these ideas of right and wrong that are rooted in Christianity, if we could only somehow find a way to set up a narrative, maybe a children's movie that has symbols in it that could be put together in a system to get people to erase the line between good and evil and to say there is no such thing as good and evil. Good and evil are mere social constructions that communities make up, and the powerful people oppress the non-powerful people with these pronouncements about what is good and evil. We saw this with Adolf Hitler. He said, here's my definition of good and evil. The good thing is to be of Aryan descent, and if you're Jewish, if you're non-Aryan, then we're going to punish you by sending you to the gas chamber. And so that's your typical example of an authority figure, a rogue authority figure who's making a pronouncement about the way things should be. I mean, it's an easy one to refer to. But so I'd like to show you a video clip from the movie Shrek that is filled with very meaningful symbols. And I'd like to show you how calculus has actually influenced the stories that we tell our children at bedtime. So there's a lot of connection between mathematics and worldview. One connection is the way that you solve worldview problems is with symbols. And the other is that mathematics has influenced the stories that we tell our children from the time that calculus was discovered in the year 1666 and 1667 and today. So that's what the rest of this presentation is about. Not supposed to go there yet. Next, I'm supposed to pull up the video clip. So look, it's video clip time. It's not even 2:30. This is like, done teaching the lesson, and we have time to actually watch a clip. Usually when I'm showing this video clip, like when I was at Stevenson High School, it would be like, end of the school year, because if people get offended, they don't have time really to complain because they're all thinking of graduating. And I can't really take a whole period for it. So this is just wonderful. We're going to open recent and hit play, which is going to bring up beginning of disc. Now, sometimes I play this on the TV screen, which has a pretty good sound system. However, because I'm making a video of the video, I'm going to use the sound which is not amplified off of the computer. This is less than ideal, but I think we might be able to pull this off. This is the opening of the movie Shrek. Shrek 1, there's like Shrek 1, Shrek 2, Shrek 3, maybe lots of other Shreks. But Shrek 1, I saw it in the movie theaters. And the scene I'm about to show you, which is the first 90 seconds of Shrek 1, is a lot, the meanings of the symbols are a lot different than they are in the rest of the movie. But this is like a little fairy tale at the beginning that's filled with symbols. And just didn't see it. I was in line for popcorn. So the first time I saw what I'm about to show you was not until I was in the luxury and comfort of my own home, watching it on a VHS cassette. That's when I first saw this. And as a mathematician, I was stunned at what I was looking at. Here's the opening of Shrek. And now, let's go view full screen. What we see is light coming down from above onto a book.
Once upon a time, there was a lovely princess. She had an enchantment upon her of the fearful sword, which could only be broken by love's first kiss. She was locked away in a castle, guarded by a terrible fire-breathing dragon. Many brave knights had attempted to free her from this dreadful prison. None prevailed. She waited in the dragon's keep, in the highest room of the tallest tower, for her true love and true love's first kiss. Like that's ever gonna happen. Oh, yeah. Somebody once told me the world is gonna know me. I ain't the sharpest tool in the shed.
Now, for those of you watching at home, you probably didn't hear Mike Myers little narrative there. And there's actually there's one little, I want to stop it. But right there, that's actually an important scene right there. He ripped a page out of the book, used it as toilet paper, and now it's stuck to the bottom of his foot. And he's trying to get it off of his foot. This is a significant moment in what's actually going on here. This is the rejection of a meta-narrative. Let's analyze the symbols in here. Let's take a look at what's actually going on. And by the way, I'm not trying to say, oh, if you watch the movie Shrek, you've sinned, you need to. No, I just want you to understand that movies have worldview formation agendas in them. There's a lot of creativity, a lot of wonderful things in this movie, a lot of movies like them. However, if you are not aware of what the agenda is in terms of worldview formation, you can be a professing Christian on one hand and consume all sorts of symbol-filled media and have your heart end up believing in a plan of salvation that has nothing to do with Christianity. And it can lead to a lot of pain, a lot of depression. So if you're aware of what the symbols are, then you can enjoy the good in these movies and yet not be damaged by the worldview formation that is being attempted. So, but I've not yet established that there's worldview formation here. Let's just keep that image in your mind. I'm going to refer to it several times. But for now, let's put it down here. So for those of you who are listening at home, in case you just plain missed it, the whole point was that in this fairy tale, we have light coming from above. It's almost like coming from heaven onto the Bible, but it's really the light's coming through the vent in the outhouse onto this book. And we see that in this book there's a lovely princess. Once upon a time, there's a lovely princess. She lives in a kingdom, and but she had this enchantment upon her of a fearful sort. We find out later that this enchantment is essentially she's beautiful during the day, but ugly at night. Dual nature. Could only be broken by love's first kiss. So there's a dragon. She needs to be rescued from her being in bondage to the dragon. You're locked away in a castle guarded by a terrible fire-breathing dragon. Many brave knights had attempted to free her from the dreadful prison, but none prevailed. So all sorts of maybe false messiahs, if you will, but as she waited in the dragon's keep, the highest room in the tallest tower, for her true love. Or as they would say in the movie Princess Bride, true love. And so sometimes this whole true love thing gets made fun of. Sometimes it's happened before. And look at the page that gets ripped. The page after this, he rips out a page. The next page would have been about marriage, about the wedding day. Probably one of the most hotly contested features of the Christian worldview is that a marriage is between one man and one woman. Anyway, so then he tears it off, uses the image that represents the knight in shining armor and uses that as toilet paper, presumably. Now, what is going on here? Let's take a look at the symbols. Now, just so you know, I'm going to use terms like pre-modern, modern, and postmodern in this presentation. And maybe I can turn the lights on. It's got to be weird to watch a video where it's kind of in the dark, except for I think that you'll be able to see. Friends, when we talk about the pre-modern era, and I know some of you are taking notes on this, so it's probably good to have lights on anyway. But friends, this is Western civilization that we're talking about. The modern era of Western civilization is roughly a 200-year period. It was a failed project, sometimes called the Enlightenment, from 1750. I've talked to you about these categories before. These, yes or no?
No.
Yeah, okay. So sometimes this is dated as from 1789, which was the storming of the Bastille, to 1989, which was the fall of the Berlin Wall. But either way, it's a failed project, 200 years. Pre-modern calculus was discovered in a pre-modern era, 1666 and 1667. And wait, this should be coming out yellow. Yellow, come on. Hello. Try it one more time. 16. What's it? You know what? Maybe it's not working because I have that turned on. Try it one more time. 1666 it actually influenced the pre-modern world, and it caused them to lose faith in God and put increased faith in reason, logic, math, and science. The equation E equals mc squared, I've talked to you about that. That had an influence in getting people to ditch the modern project and go for postmodernism. But with those basic terms in mind, in the pre-modern era, parents would try to form worldview in their children's imaginations by reading them bedtime stories filled with symbols. And sometimes these symbols would, I'm gonna get rid of the DVD player, that's probably causing a little bit of glitchiness. So these symbols might be things like the king in the story. Now, just like X in my mathematical story represented the number of ebooks sold, what do you think king represents in a pre-modern fairy tale, in a story used by Christian parents trying to form Christian worldview in their children in a bedtime story? What might a king represent? A king in a story.
God.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you said? Okay, maybe a priest, and yet a priest. A priest is a symbol also. A priest would be a symbol in Catholicism, Eastern Orthodox, even in Anglicanism. The priest is a symbol of God, or at least of Jesus. But we'll go. I think God is very reasonable thing to say. Might show up better on video if we go blue. Let's go blue on this. Okay, we saw another symbol. We saw the dragon. Now, these days, dragons often have different meanings in narrative, but back in the pre-modern era, what did a dragon often represent, or even in the Bible? Class?
Oh,
Satan, the devil. We saw there was a princess, beautiful during the day, ugly at night. What might a feminine character, she might be symbolic of what in a pre-modern fairy tale?
ugly nature. Judah.
Well, I think
Everyone.
Judas. Yeah, I think. Well, what do you think about a princess being used to represent really all of mankind, just people in general? Oftentimes, the church is represented as a female character, the bride of Christ. So, mankind, both beautiful because we're made in the image of God, but ugly because we fell into sin. Another symbol is the knight in shining armor. Who might he represent in a pre-modern fairy tale? Jesus, the Messiah, who's going to rescue us from Satan's grip on our sinful hearts. There's also an ogre implied. There's certainly an ogre in Shrek, but the pre-modern view of ogre was kind of like a disciple of Satan.
What is that ogre?
Ogre, O-G-R-E, disciple of Satan. When ogres first showed up in literature, it was 15th century France, and they would be these characters that would kidnap children, give them all sorts of wonderful food, but then kill them in their sleep, find and eat their bodies. These are the epitome of evil. These are men who have devoted their lives to Satan and engaged in the deepest, most heinous forms of evil. So, and that's what an ogre used to represent. Now, so if you were to now analyze this, I have to turn the lights off of this, otherwise there's no way it'll show up on the video. But in the pre-modern fairy tale, it'd be very common for a king to represent that which we worship and trust, to represent God. The princess represents the nature of mankind, part beautiful, part ugly. What causes suffering? That's Satan. Satan is the cause of suffering. Satan and our sinful hearts. We're rescued by the knight in shining armor, a symbol of Jesus Christ. Now, what if you are trying to solve the problem? You say, wow, this worldview, that's why there's so much suffering in the world. That's why there's wars and people just cannot be happy in their marriages because, these men always have to get married to women and all these rules. Just ruining people's lives. We have to somehow get rid of this symbol system. Let's come up with, just historically, this is where calculus started. Calculus caused people to have faith in God, not so much faith in human reason, much more faith in human reason. Instead of viewing on your map of reality, instead of viewing mankind as part good, part evil, say, no, you know what? People aren't evil. People are good. People are good. You know what's wrong with the world? It's not people's sinful hearts. problem with the world is war, poverty, disease, disaster, ignorance. Things that can be solved by going to university, because our Messiah is not a truthful, loving person, Jesus Christ. The Messiah is disembodied truth. If the Beatles had been singing back then, they would have said, all we need is truth, truth, truth is all we need. That would have been their hit song. And in the modern era, that would have sold a lot of copies on Amazon. Okay? Now, once E equals MC squared came along, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, people are like, forget it. Math, logic, reason, logic, math, and science are not delivering us from suffering. They didn't keep the Titanic from sinking, and they didn't keep us from getting things like atomic bombs. So forget the modern project, let's reject it. And so when you see, keep in mind, postmodernism is a word that was coined by the French philosopher Lyotard, who used 3 words to define postmodernism. Have I told you what those 3 words are? Incredulity toward meta-narratives. Meta-narratives, any meta-narrative that says, here's, you have to conform to the wishes of God, some external authority figure. All of those lack credibility, and you should instead reject those, like getting dirty toilet paper off of your foot. Just get rid of it, and instead you become the author of your own micro-narrative. You be God of your own life. There's various streams of postmodernism. There's actually Christian postmodernism, because Christians should also reject modernism. We should reject idolizing the mind. So there is a Christian postmodernism, but secular postmodernism is a full-up rejection of Christianity. So instead, the map of reality can be conveyed symbolically to children before they even make it into school. Children can understand what this worldview is. Look, if Christianity is the bad guys, if Christians are the bad guys, and the God of, so what you can do, you can come up with a movie like Shrek, where the king is the bad guy. The king is torturing gingerbread men. Lord Farquaad is just sending all the friendly fairy tale characters to the swamp, putting them on trains, sending them to the swamp in the same way that Hitler sent Jews to concentration camps. It's just hideous, this hideous character. So, but the princess, okay, first of all, talk about the ogre. Ogre's a really friendly guy. All we need is love, love. Love is all we need. We see that even though, they're ugly. What happens when they get married? They get married. And, oh, by the way, that's how ogres used to be depicted. Murdering children in their sleep. Not cool. But there's a lot of other movies that try to see, if you really want to erase the category of evil, what you could do is get your movie-making community together and say, let's look at every single symbol that represents evil. Ogres, let's portray them as friendly. Pirates, they don't go around stealing people and, raping women. They're cool. Ogres are friendly, pirates are cool, vampires are sexy. Witches are simply victims of male oppression. Dragons make wonderful house pets if they only get proper training. Dragons aren't like satanic. Come on, get over it. That's embarrassing to think that. Monsters are so great. If you need a babysitter for the weekend, you can leave your kids with the monsters. They'll take good care of them. And dragons. The dragon in Shrek is not satanic. It's really helpful. I mean, suppose you need to crash a wedding, and you and Donkey need to, make it over the tall wall. The dragon will help you out. Can I remember? So it reminds me of this time I went to the mall, and this guy was wearing a T-shirt that had an image of the devil on the T-shirt, and the caption was, "God's busy. May I help you?" It's like, that's who this guy is. It's just a really helpful guy, and just so loving. So taking symbols, the same symbols that are used to convey the Christian worldview and that pathway to dealing with suffering caused by sin and Satan, the same symbols can have new meaning attached to them. The spherical chicken lesson taught us that not only can humans attach meaning to symbols with words, we can also attach meaning to symbols using movies. We get this system of symbols, and then when you solve it, you come up with a solution to the problem of human suffering. The solution to the problem of human suffering, when you look at all the symbols taken together, is to realize that evil is a socially constructed category. I asked my students at Stevenson High School, is there anything on your list of things that are absolutely evil? Things like maybe torturing children for entertainment. He said, no, nothing is absolutely evil. The only things that can be called evil are socially constructed things. If in your society you decide that arresting, deporting, and murdering Jews is evil, then fine. But if you say that's good, then okay, then it's good. It's all up to God, where God is yourself. The only person you can trust in a postmodern era is self. If I had been teaching at Stevenson High School this year, then the first day of school, I was expected by the social workers to let everyone exercise godlike powers on the first day to create themselves. My instructions were, go around the room, have every student introduce themselves using their preferred gender pronouns. So don't accept the way that God created you. There is no God. Instead, you create yourself. If I say, I am a man, I am a woman, or I am something, you get to decide. You get to decide what you are on day one. So I found that not only schools are schools are religious institutions. The school I taught at was trying to teach people that the problem with the world is Christianity, and the solution is to throw off any vestiges of Christianity in your culture, and instead, you be the God of your own life. And this would be reinforced in various courses. It was all celebrated. It came to a head senior year prom night where there would be this, this counterfeit wedding. It's like people would, instead of having a Christian wedding, after, a lot of people, they go to college and then they get married. Stevenson High School, they go through this religious institution, they learn to throw off Christianity, and they say, okay, so we're going to go to prom night and have sex with whomever we want. And then there's a counterfeit honeymoon called Senior Ditch Day. And then they just continue on a life where they completely ignore God's rules for how to make decisions. It's possible for a school to be a religious institution. It's also possible for movies to have religious content, to have worldview content. Because if you look at the symbols in a movie and you understand how all the symbols are working together, you say, oh, they've come up with a plan that they want the children to learn that is seen, actually it's seen most profoundly at the wedding in Shrek. In the wedding, Shrek kisses Fiona. Oh, there's Smaug, by the way. Smaug actually is an evil dragon. That's one thing about C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, is that they use symbols that don't have changed meanings. The symbols have the same meaning as they do in the Bible. But bad guy. Don't be nice to gingerbread men. Don't treat them like that. But when Shrek kisses Fiona, my generation watching that movie, we got whiplash because we were expecting what to happen. If you put yourself in my shoes, what were we expecting to happen when Shrek kissed Fiona in the wedding? What was my generation expecting would happen when Shrek married Fiona? Well, do you know what actually did happen? She became ugly 24/7. Hi.
Dare I ask Sedona Whitney here?
No, sorry.
No, all right, I left.
So in Shrek, when Shrek kisses Fiona, instead of being beautiful during the day, ugly at night, what we were expecting, my generation was expecting her to become beautiful 24/7. She became ugly 24/7. Do you know what message that sends? Beauty and ugliness themselves are symbols that represent good and evil traditionally. Like in The Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch was ugly. The Good Witch was beautiful. But when you symbolically say that beauty and ugliness are irrelevant, that's a way of sending your message of salvation, saying that good and evil are not a thing. They're not real. There's no such thing as real evil. When you abolish the significance of beauty and ugliness in the heart of a child, you're actually, without them having any knowledge of it, you are encouraging them to erase the line between good and evil. And you set up the nightmare scenario. The nightmare scenario is when a child says that based on the media that they've consumed, say, I'm not ugly. My parents told me that it's ugly to want to steal and be selfish and cheat. But I'm finding out that's not, ugly is not a thing. And so I don't need a savior. I don't need Jesus to save me. There's nothing to be saved from. That's the nightmare scenario. If a person who grows up in a Christian home ends up consuming a lot of media that tells them, you know what, you don't need a savior. There is no such thing as evil from which you need to be saved. So that's an example of how, should have shown you, should have still had the lights on. After he kisses the bride, there's this this miraculous transformation where it's like, the way I interpret this is that this is the transformation, this is the new life that you experience once you get rid of the categories of good and evil. She's still ugly, but it doesn't matter. It's like now she has love. And love is all we need. My view is that truth without love is too hard, but love without truth is too soft. You actually need both truth and love. And that's who Jesus is. He's a truthful, loving person. So what I'm arguing is that mathematics, in the same way that mathematicians use symbols to solve problems about publishing, people who are authors of stories, they use symbols to try to solve worldview problems. Problems like, how are we going to escape human suffering and solve the problem of human suffering? This symbolic system in this movie tells us that the way we abolish human suffering is by erasing the line between good and evil and realizing that's just a social construction. Now, is there anything that, something maybe you agree with, maybe something you disagree with in what I presented, or maybe something that's just confusing to you? It's like, you're wondering what I'm talking about. So questions, comments, or pushback, now's the time.
Wait, so Shrek is good or bad?
Well, what I'm saying is that, there's a lot of wonderful creativity in Shrek, and it's fun. It's a fun movie to watch. However, it is conveying, in fact, the screenwriter Terry Rossio, this isn't accidental. It's not like he just creative writing, this is what he happened to come up with. He told his creative team, he went on record, he's online saying that the whole point of Shrek was to take the traditional fairy tale and turn it on its head. That's a politically correct way of saying we want to take Christianity and abolish it. Because the traditional fairy tale was used by Christians to teach their children a Christian worldview. So, but So, and then he was also a screenwriter for Pirates of the Caribbean. And then it caught on. It's like, wow, these movies are really popular. Any movie that takes symbols of evil and points out, no, they're not really evil. The only really evil thing is authority figures who think they know the truth. People like King Farquaad, or like the authority figures in Pirates of the Caribbean. People who are in charge, powerful authority figures who think they know the truth. That's who we really have to watch out for. People who say, God says this is evil and God says this is good. God says marriage has to be between one man and one woman. That's what's really evil. That's what's really messing things up. So enjoy Shrek as long as you don't receive its message that's delivered through a very carefully crafted symbolic system. Just like a system of two equations and two unknowns, this is an even more intricate system of symbols that are designed to solve a problem of human suffering. Any other questions, agreement, or disagreement? I'm all ears. Am I onto something here, or is this just completely off base?
This is great. Good question.
Yeah.
How did you get over it if you didn't believe that if you have a male body, you're not supposed to be thinking you're female? And how did you, while believing it's false, but still carry it?
So wait, I'm not sure I understand the question completely. Can you, I know you're asking about, the male and female body issue going on
Like the
in culture
students
today.
back at Stevenson.
Oh, back at Stevenson.
Yeah, how?
Oh,
sorry,
well,
you don't agree with it.
Yeah, I never cooperated with that. The social workers would say things like, they would very clearly communicate by using student voices in the meeting, saying that the compassionate teachers, the cool teachers are the ones who go along with this and have people go around the room and announce their preferred gender identity. So it was very clear that even though we did not get a directive from the principal, this is what you have to do on day one. No, but it's very clear that if you don't do it, you're going to be considered a teacher who lacks compassion, a teacher who's not cool, one who's, supporting this system of oppressing people by, forcing them into either the category of male or female based on their biological characteristics. So, yeah.
Well, cool or not.
So yeah, if I had taught there this year, then I would certainly have, taken a hit to my reputation and been viewed as a non-cool teacher.
Oh,
For not, yeah, it was supposed to start, well, they did start it this past fall. So this was the first school year where they were like, let's do this, everyone. All right? Anything else? Is this, I hope I wasn't telling you things you already knew. Was this? Well, thank you for your kind attention. Actually, this is fourth time I delivered this week. This is my Algebra 2 classes, so it's actually helpful for me to be able to practice working this through. It's something I care about a lot. But well, that's it. I guess we're done for today. Unless there's any other questions or comments. The homework that's due on Friday is assignment 5.8. The solutions are already posted. So when the bell rings, you're out of here.